Hey guys, this is Mrs. Powers, and I'm going to read your history lesson, lesson 21. Fall of the Western Roman Empire, lesson 21. Thousands of years ago, Rome was just a tiny village, but that village grew into a bustling city. That city became a major republic, and that republic expanded to become the largest and most powerful empire that had ever been. But as many nations rise and fall over time, so even the Roman Empire fell. Today we'll look at how such an enormous empire could collapse. That is, at least how half of it collapsed in 476. It certainly wasn't easy. The last time we took an in-depth look at the Roman Empire, it was under the rule of Constantine the Great. He's the one who made it against the law to persecute Christians in 313. After Constantine, the leadership of Rome passed through many different emperors over the course of 100 years. Some were good and some were bad. At the height of the empire, Rome ruled almost all of Europe, parts of the Middle East, and the northern coast of Africa. That's part of 3 different continents. The proud Romans even claimed the Mediterranean Sea as their own and called it Mare Nostrum. Oh, here's how it said, Mare Nostrum. Mare Nostrum. That's Latin for our sea. It may be in part the huge size of Rome that had something to do with its downfall. As Rome swallowed up more nations, it was harder and harder to find enough soldiers to defend these newly conquered territories. So the Roman Empire began to hire foreigners and outsiders as soldiers. This worked to give the Romans more soldiers, but then the Roman army wasn't purely Roman anymore. It was made up partly of rebellious barbarians. The Romans used the term barbarian to describe anyone from a tribe outside of Rome. It meant ignorant one. To complicate matters, it cost a lot of money for the Romans to hire outsiders for their army. To pay for more soldiers, the government did 2 things. They raised taxes and they devalued money. The result of these actions was that prices rose sharply on things people bought, such as food, clothing, and houses. We call that inflation. With inflation and rising taxes, many people left the busy cities and headed to the country. This caused business and trade between the cities of the empire to suffer. If these problems weren't enough to shake the Roman Empire, it so happened that tribes outside of Rome were looking for places to live. Remember the Huns? They are just one example of a nomadic group of people looking for land in Rome. Unfortunately for the Romans, there were many other groups doing the same thing. To keep these different people groups straight, we'll look at them in alphabetical order in the following paragraphs. First, there were the Angles, probably. These barbarians, as the Romans would have called them, began to move into the Roman region we now call England. In fact, the name England comes from the Old English word, Angla and land, which together meant land of the Angles. Excuse me. They were joined by the Jute and Saxon tribes. You've probably heard of the Anglo-Saxons. The term comes from the blend of the Angles and the Saxons who settled in England at the fall of the Roman Empire. Most of our English language comes from these people. Another invading group was the Franks. The Franks were of German descent. Under the leadership of a king named Clovis, the Franks took northern Gaul from the Romans in 486. The area became so well populated by the Franks that it was named France after them. Interestingly, Clovis converted to Christianity at some time during his reign. His beliefs helped shape the future of France. The Goths were another Germanic tribe that invaded the Roman Empire. The Goths split into 2 groups, one called the Visigoths, Western Goths, and the other, the Ostrogoths, Eastern Goths. The names are easy to confuse. If you remember, the Visigoths are the ones who helped Rome fight off Attila the Hun. Because they helped, the Visigoths were offered a small part of the Roman Empire. They were supposed to remain there in peace, but they didn't. In 409, the Visigoths rallied together and stormed Italy. By 410, they did the unthinkable and sacked the city of Rome itself. This capital city hadn't been invaded for nearly 800 years. It was a tough blow to the entire empire. But the hardest blow to Rome was yet to come. In 455, there was yet another Germanic tribe seeking to conquer Rome. They were the Vandals. To this day, the term Vandal refers to someone who sets out to destroy or plunder someone's property. The term accurately fits that which happened in 455. The Vandals hit the city of Rome like a hurricane, and for 2 straight weeks they ripped it apart through looting and violence. The attack by the Vandals came somewhat out of surprise because of the way they traveled to get to Rome. Instead of coming from the north as might have been expected, the Vandals attacked Rome from the south. They did this by crossing into Africa from Spain and then sailing across the Mediterranean. Once on the coast of Italy, the Vandals traveled up the Tiber River, and burned much of Rome to the ground. If burning the city wasn't harsh enough, thousands of Romans were taken as slaves. Men were taken from their families, and children were ripped away from their parents. Thousands of farms were ruined, fields and businesses were abandoned, and the population dropped from 1,500,000 to 300,000 in just 10 years. To protect themselves from complete destruction, village residents used debris from the cities to build walls around their towns. Italy was in terrible chaos. You won't believe what was included in some of the looting by the Vandals. It seems they stole from the Romans what the Romans once stole from the Jews. I'm referring to the sacred items from the temple. You see, the Romans had kept some of the treasures from the temple in Jerusalem when the Emperor Titus attacked it in AD 70. Masses of gold candle stands, special goblets, precious metals, and remnants of furniture were stored by the Romans for over 300 years until the Vandals swiped it all right out from under them. Kind of interesting, don't you think? For centuries, the Romans had bullied and brutalized most of Europe into submission and murdered many a saint. Daniel of the Old Testament said in his prophecy that the 4th beast, referring to Rome, would be exceedingly dreadful and devour the whole earth, trample it, and break it in pieces. Daniel was accurate in his prophecy, but the long reign of Roman terror did end. The very last Western Roman leader, a youth named Romulus Augustus, was ousted from the throne by Odoacer, a German war chief. This happened in 476. It's been called the fall of the Western Roman Empire ever since, and although much of the fall was due to invasion by barbarians, the moral decline of Rome had much to do with it too. From so many years of bloodshed, the Romans had lost the value of human life. Marriage was no longer sacred, and materialism, or too much wealth, had spoiled the masses. Knowing all of this, you may now better understand why the early Middle Ages is sometimes called the Dark Ages. You see, the fall of the Western Roman Empire ushered in a dark time in the history of Europe. It was dark from the moral decay of Rome and for the lack of progress. The arts completely dwindled as prosperity collapsed. Scholars fled to what remained of the Eastern Roman Empire. It was later called the Byzantine Empire. People lost interest in education as they fought just to survive. Barbarian raiders destroyed books and schools so that over time, many lost the skill of reading or writing. That included the loss of reading God's Word. Despite the numerous flaws of the Roman Empire, the Romans contributed many important things to the rest of the world. The Latin language that came from the Romans is the basis of 5 modern languages and has heavily influenced many other languages, including English. Engineering and architecture reached new heights under the Romans. This is made clear by the fact that some Roman roads, aqueducts, and bridges are still in use. Most importantly, Roman law and government provided a foundation for many governments today, including my own. In closing, the fall of the Western Roman Empire is important history to know. With moral decay and materialism invading modern nations today, we can make the same mistakes as the Romans. Pray that we learn from history and not neglect its great lessons. All right, that's the end of 21. Hope you guys enjoyed and have a great week.